How's it going, Dr. Welk?
How you doing, Chris? Good to
Pretty
hear from
well,
you.
pretty well. So I guess my question is a pretty basic one. You know, where do you start when you're trying to become an entrepreneur? When you're an entrepreneur and you're trying to build your first company, where do you start? If you have, if you don't have the capital and you don't necessarily have, the resources to actually build um, a business, where do you start?
Patrick, you and me.
I'll let you take that.
Okay.
That's probably good for you.
Okay. Thank you. And that's well, Chris. I think that's $1 million question that all entrepreneurs are faced with. You are no different, so take heart in that. Um, it all depends on what it is you're trying to start. Obviously, is it a product-based company or a services-based company? Would you mind elaborating a little bit as to what you had in mind, or is it just a general question?
It's a service-based company. Right now technology is really huge. Virtual reality is starting to really take off. So if you're looking to get a foot in that, a nice stronghold in that area, where do you start?
Okay. Well, yeah. Again, virtual reality, augmented reality. That's a big area, and definitely a promising one. Uh, I can tell you in general. I can share with you. Some folks will come with a whole bunch of connections. Some will come with a bunch of capital. Some will come with both. And of course, if you have both, then it becomes a much easier proposition. But if you don't have the capital, which is typically the case with most entrepreneurs, then you have to slog it out. Um, but even if you don't have the capital, you got to have some contacts, because you got to have some customers. If you don't have a customer as yet, then you have to do it yourself. You have to, whatever your service is, that you have to go out and peddle and try and get in front of some customers, potential customers, and try and sign someone up. It all depends again what kind of service it is, whether it's hourly paid or is it project based or is it like time and materials and so on and so forth. Um, so what I would say is that don't don't be in a catch-22 situation. I mean, you're waiting for this, but this has not come, and so on and so forth. Get going. Just get going. Um, and that may sound counterintuitive. A lot of people will talk to you about business plan. I know at SCORE we kind of hammer that into people. But to be honest with you, when I started out, I didn't have a business plan. Um, I mean, I had a rough idea as to what I wanted to do. The problem with a business plan and trying to be too academic about it, too detail oriented, there's rarely a entrepreneur that I know or a business that knew exactly what they wanted and ended up exactly where they wanted to go. Okay. Jeff Bezos is the only exception that I'm aware of on a national level. But if you look at whether it be Steve Jobs or Bill Gates, people don't know it, but Bill Gates' earlier company before Microsoft was something else. He was not doing operating systems at all. Same thing with Steve Jobs and Wozniak. They were not doing PCs. Heck, nobody even knew what PCs were back then. So the journey of an entrepreneur typically is you start out north, you then find out that that's not where the pot of gold is, and then you veer northwest, and then by the time you're done, you might be even headed south, in a manner of speaking. That's typically a lot of entrepreneurs. Okay, that's the reality. So I don't know what your services are, to go into more detail, but the important thing is to get going, build some customer relationships. That's important. Build contacts as you go along. Don't worry about whether you're doing 100,000 a year or 10,000 a year or a million a year. That'll come later. But the important thing is to just move. Okay. And obviously, with a little bit of thought, I'm not saying just jump into it right away tonight, but don't go in circles, gnashing your teeth as to, is this the right way? Is that the right way? Because the only way you're going to find out if the water is too hot or too deep or too cold is you jump into it. And that's when you're going to find your own way. And then definitely have mentors, have people that you can ask for advice. So that's what I would do.
Mm.
That was awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Chris, the only thing I would add to that, and that was great advice. Thank you, Nick. The only thing I would add to that, and I tell a lot of my students, and it's advice that I've taken, is go into work in an industry for 1 or 2 years first and see if that's really an industry that you want to be in. They say in China, get paid by your competition, right? To learn the industry, right? Then if you don't end up not liking it, then you can always, it's much easier to move on. You don't have to worry about investors or stakeholders or anything. At the same time, if you do end up going into it, you know the lay of the land, you know who you have built networks already, you're already into the market and you're ready to go. You can, it's much easier than to sell your sales plan or your business plan to people to say, hey, you've got 2 years experience, you know how this market works, you know the connections, it'll be much easier to get money then and to get moneyed than if you just jump right in immediately. That doesn't mean you can't, like if you see an exciting idea, you can. That's another methodology that you could use. So.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. I mean, Chris, I don't know your background, so I'm assuming you had some exposure in that area, worked in that area, but I would 100% agree with what Patrick just said. You really have to be in that industry, have some experience, and like you said, do you like it, And that's how you're going to generate some contacts. There could be all kinds of contacts, whether they be suppliers or customers or fellow workers of the future. So definitely do that. Yeah.
Did you have any follow-up to that, Chris, or are you good?
No, that was pretty much it, guys. I'm here to soak up as much knowledge as I can. Thank you.
Chris is always, he's an amazing student in my class. He's always very curious. So that's always the beginning. You have to be curious.
That's good.
Davis, you want to go next? I know you had a little connection challenges. It looked like you're solid now. Would you want to go ahead, Davis Alford? Can you hear me? I know you were having connection issue. Davis, can you hear me? Okay, we'll go on. Yeah, he's still having the connection issue. I'll go on. Lizzie, are you there? Hey, Liz, how are you? Your mic's not on. There you go.
Good, how are you?
Great. Here's another ball of energy. Nick, if you want to meet a ball of energy, right there, right? She's full of it. So.
All right.
So, Liz, what can we do for you tonight?
So my question is, what expertise would I need to successfully launch my business for a beginner, like a person that has no prior knowledge?
Okay. I'll take this one.
Okay.
One of the things, like we were talking about earlier, I probably shouldn't say this, but I think many times passion oversees knowledge. Okay, if you're passionate about something, you will learn it, right? A lot of people try to learn knowledge, but they're, over time, they're like, I'm going to go in this field because, there's big money there or there's big opportunity there, which can work. Don't get me wrong, it can work. Okay. But if you're passionate about something, Liz, the knowledge will just come because you're just going to wake up every day and you're going to want to know more, right? The biggest challenge I had with the first company taking over a family firm is I had to do it. I mean, it was do or die, right? So I spent 5 years turning that around. And as soon as we saw daylight, as soon as we could turn it around, I got out, right? And the first business I jumped back in, which was triathlon, it was at that time was my love. And that business, even though it was a nonprofit, took off. We took it from nothing to 25 employees within 1 year. So, I mean, from my point of view, having that passion, you hear it over and over again, and people say, oh, you got to have passion, blah, blah, blah. But to me, if you have that passion, the knowledge will come. So, Nick, you have some thoughts?
Yeah. I think that's an excellent question. You know, that tends to be given very little thought, but it is so true. And especially Patrick, what you just mentioned. You know, I also teach some classes at SCORE, and one of them is, are you cut out to be an entrepreneur? And I cover some other subjects like business opportunities, marketing, real estate, and all that's good stuff. But in this particular section right here, and it's not in a part of our SCORE material, I just add my own stuff. I use the acronym PPAR, okay? P like Paul, AR. So what Patrick just mentioned right now, one of the P stands for passionate. You have to be passionate. If you're not passionate, it is a tough slog if you're trying to start your own business. You're going to encounter a lot of challenges. You're going to encounter rejection. Trust me, boy, you got to get used to rejection. And, you know, you got to be able to pick yourself up and keep going. And unless you're passionate and persistent, which is the next P, you got to be persistent. But if you have passion, you're likely to be persistent. But you got to have persistence too. So just being passionate is not enough. You got to be also persistent, in my opinion. So those are key. And the other part of A and R is it stands for just something I came up with. Okay, should have been a more catchy acronym. It's not. But R stands for reading. You have to be well read. Now, well-read is not necessarily just opening up a whole bunch of books. Can be on the internet. It could be interacting with other people, attending webinars, seminars, all kinds of informational things, because the technology is changing very rapidly. There's a lot of stuff that's happening. Used to be you could start a business 30 years or 40 years back, and that business plan would pretty much stay. Excuse me, I just need to let my dog out. One sec, please.
Yeah, one of the things he was hitting on is, you know, business evolves very quickly nowadays.
So, you know, I always give that analogy that smartphone that you're holding in your pocket. I'm from an IT background, right? The smartphone that you're holding in your pocket or your purse has more computing power than all the computers in the world that existed in the 1970s. Believe it or not. And that included NASA's computer that sent man to the moon and brought him back, et cetera, et cetera. That included all the private computers in the world. You add them all up together, and the computing power of all those computers is less than what's in your hand. And that stuff came about just, guess what, in the last 12 years. It wasn't even there before. Now you can do GPS, you can do FaceTime with people, talk on the video. That was like space, sci-fi stuff. So things are evolving so rapidly now, the technology. I mean, it's just unbelievable. So some years back when I was teaching, and I used to talk about automated trucking. Okay, now you're reading that in the news. You're hearing that in the news. But several years back, because I was part of this called Houston Angel Network, Han locally, I was in it for about a couple of years, and then I left. We invest in early startups basically. So you got to see a lot of interesting technologies, and one of them was automated trucking. And so when I said that, I remember two people in my class, you know, one lady, big lady, she said, no way, that's not happening. This was 4 years back. Okay. 4 years back, she said it's not happening. And if you are a motel owner on that highway relying on trucking, if you are a barbecue joint relying on truckers, there's going to be massive disruption to your business and you're likely to go out of business. Simple as that. It's going to happen within the next few years. Within the next 3 to 4 years, 5 years max, 300,000 truckers are likely to lose their jobs. This is huge. That's out of a total of 900,000 truckers. And this is, don't go by what I'm saying. It's on 60 Minutes too. You can, so these changes can come out of left field. If you're a motel owner or a barbecue joint owner, you're thinking your competition is the other barbecue joint down the road, a mile away or 2 miles away or whatever. And if you're a motel owner, you're thinking it's another motel owner. But guess what? It's neither of them. It turned out to be technology. Came from nowhere and boom, your business model is rendered useless. So there was a time you could open up a motel or a barbecue joint and boy, that would be, you just steadily increase your business 10 years, 20 years. That has changed completely. So you have to be well-read, i.e. well-informed. And by coming to something like this, you are taking that step, by the way. Keep doing it. Just keep doing it. And the other part of that PPAR, which is very important, that few entrepreneurs, not few, I would say, but entrepreneurs find hard is the adaptable, A for adaptable. You have to be adaptable. You can't be like, no, this is the only way. Now, if you're Steve Jobs and brilliant, you could carry it. But most of us are not Steve Jobs, and most of us we don't have that kind of brilliance, and most of us need to be adaptable. Like Steve Jobs almost drove Apple bankrupt twice. Just remember that, because of his insistence. So PPAR, that's an acronym I have in my classes I preach. That's what I would say to you. Sorry, it was a long answer.
Thank you so much. Thank you to Mr. Dr. Walk and Mr. Tarte. Are you Doctor or Mr. Tarte?
Me? Oh, I'm not a doctor. I'm just a doctor of doing nothing. My name is Nick.
Mr. Nick. Okay.
Thank you, Liz. Let's see. Davis, were you able to get on or? Okay, we'll try to reach him later. I think he's having trouble. Marina? Is it Marina? Marina, can you hear me? Sanchez?
I'm here. Hello.
Hi. Is it Mariana or Marina? I'm sorry.
No, Marina. Like
Marina.
where you go to find, where the boats are.
Where the boats are. Very good. Well, my last name is Woke, like you woke up in the morning. No one ever pronounces it right. But yeah. Marina, why don't you tell me what you're up to today? We're more than happy to answer questions for you.
So basically I wanted to come in today because I want to know a little more about, what experiences that we could bring in as individuals to help our businesses succeed. And then also perhaps what are some mistakes that you don't realize you're making so that we can avoid them once we do decide to start our own business.
Oh, those are some really good questions. I'll hit one real quick and then I'll hand it off to you, Nick. Okay. I think one of the biggest flaws that I've made early on, in entrepreneurship, even though they always like to envision jobs and all these big figures, entrepreneurship is about teams. It's about people. Okay. If you don't have good people with you, you don't have good people on your bus, they call it on the bus, right? If you don't have good people on the bus, it's really hard to really expand and grow your business. Okay. Now there are exceptions. Don't get me wrong. There are exceptions. There are those people who operate the $10 million business out of their home on the laptop. Okay. But they're very few and far between. And the reality is great companies are built by great built by great people. So the one thing that I failed at early on in my business and I had to learn is that it really at the beginning of any company, you need to get the right people in the right seat. So you need to find that, you need to bring in the right people for the right job in your company. And you need to evaluate that very quickly at the beginning. And unfortunately, if they don't fit, you need to get rid of them. But once they're there, once you have someone who's in the right place in the right seat, and they're the right person, then you need to train them and evolve them and grow them and really put in your investment into them. So the thing that I would say is when you build a team, one of the initial problems is, we always turn to our friends and family because we don't have any money, we don't have anything. But you really need, once you get to a point where you're making money, you really need to get the right people in the right seat in your company. That's really something the key that I do now when I look at any company or looking to invest in companies is, do they have the right people in the right seat in the company? Do they have the right players in the team? And, that's one of the keys that I would share with you. Nick?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, as far as the second part, which is making mistakes, gosh, be prepared. You will be making plenty of mistakes. If you don't, uh, you're God or something, a goddess. You're going to make mistakes that, you remember that I spoke about earlier, that you're going to start north, and before you know it, you're headed northwest, and before you know it, again, you're headed west. You're going to be changing directions based on what you are observing, what you're learning. Remember that PPAR, based on your reading, your observation, you're being adaptable. So is that a mistake? I don't know. That's not really a mistake. Mistakes are something where you tend to repeat what you have done before that was incorrect. Because as an entrepreneur, there's going to be a first time for everything. And if you keep repeating something that you did wrong, then that is a mistake, in my opinion. Otherwise, I mean, as an entrepreneur, what Patrick is saying is right in terms of having the right people. But as an entrepreneur, from my standpoint, I would have loved to hire highly competent people. I just didn't have the luxury to. I just didn't have the money. Because my competition, remember, at that time was all high-end companies. And so my competition was Accenture and IBM back in those days. IBM was pretty big. So these were like blue chip companies offering blue chip salaries and blue chip benefits, and I couldn't match any of that. So I was automatically getting people who are less than the top of the rung. I was getting second, third, fourth, third tiered candidates. Now, you as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, it's going to be up to you to get the best out of a team that is not the A team. And you want to head to an A team, that's for sure, without a doubt. But I didn't have that luxury. And unless you come extremely well funded, like you go in the pitch competition and someone says, yep, here's a check for $1 million or $2 million, then you have the ability to hire some good people for sure. But even then, you end up getting not necessarily what you want, but you end up settling for what you can get. And so your skill as a person who can still work with those people, like what Patrick talked about, the team, be able to get more out of them than what someone else would. So in my company at the time, I resorted to all kinds of flexibility in their ability to work from this time to that time, work even remotely. This was back then. Now everyone talks remotely. So you have to do things that big companies don't allow these people to do. So to get the best out of these folks, best out of your team, your employees. So I'm not sure if I answered your question, but.
And one thing I would piggyback on what Nick is saying is, at the end of the day, if I couldn't get, I always shot for the right person. But the one parameter I always looked at was, I looked at their moral code, because you can learn any skill, right? But if your values and the values of the leader are not at least in a similar pathway, you're always going to be, maybe not the word distrusting, but maybe not understanding each other, right?
Okay.
And trust, you've heard this probably 1,000 times, but trust is so integral, not just in your business, but also with your employees and with your company. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. Attitude versus aptitude, right?
Yeah.
Aptitude is something that you look for, but most important is the attitude, and attitude encompasses the trust and all these other intangible. And that's what, thanks for bringing that up, Patrick, because when I look back at my companies, the people who helped me grow were not necessarily the most experienced in that particular slot, whether it be sales or technical areas or so on and so forth, or even in business development and support. These were people with good attitude, and they stepped into those roles, and I kept on giving them lots of freedom to be able to do more things, and people enjoy that. In big companies, they are siloed into with those four walls tightly drawn around them. So some people look for that, and an entrepreneur's ability to bring out the best from second tier people, emphasizing the attitude part is going to be key.
Yeah. Excellent. That was really excellent, Nick. Did that, Marina, is that good, or do you have any follow-up?
No, I think that was good. I like everything you've been saying earlier, kind of about just being adaptable, kind of goes with this.
Yes.
So I appreciate it.
It appears Davis is having some trouble with his microphone, so he has a question in chat. So I'm going to share that, okay? I would like to know if a graduate degree is needed these days to be successful businessman or woman. I don't know if asking a person at a university is a good person to ask. I think I'll let Nick run with that one. I would like to earn my MBA, but most entrepreneurs discourage taking on debt and spending time versus jumping into the market and learning as you go. How do you feel regarding this? Nick, take it away on that one.
I'm sorry, what was the last sentence?
Oh, sorry about that. How do you all feel regarding this? How do you feel regarding this?
Or just jumping into it?
Jumping into the market, don't need the education, let's go do it.
Okay. Well, okay, so we have Bill Gates, who dropped out of undergraduate at Harvard, right? So who says you need even a degree, much less a MBA or a master's? There are some folks who are like that, who do brilliantly. Mark Zuckerberg is another guy. Steve Jobs is another guy. And in fact, he used to ask all his hires, do you smoke weed? That was his first question. If those people are not experimenting with LSD or weed, he didn't want them, because he felt that only if you had that, and I'm not advocating that, by the way. I'm just saying different perspectives of people not focused on education. I'll tell you from my standpoint, my MBA helped me, okay? Because it helped me because when I was an entrepreneur and I started, I didn't have an accountant, for example, and I was doing whatever, 300,000 a year, $500,000 a year, 1 million a year. And I was doing all my accounting books. And when banks were asking me for my profit and P&L and balance sheet, I knew what that was. Now, if I had not done my MBA, I would have probably still figured it out, but it would have added to my stress and strain of doing what I was doing, which was pretty much 15, 16 hours a day. So MBA also helped me from the standpoint of understanding the importance of marketing. Okay, that's a subject that's near and dear to me. And marketing is what helped me to compete with the likes of IBM and Accenture and others, Deloitte and Touche. Um, it was the ability to brand and differentiate yourself, which was absolutely key. And that's another subject I teach at SCORE. So it helped me. But like I said, if you ask Bill Gates, he's been given a PhD, honorary PhD by Harvard, because he earned it as part of what he did with Microsoft. So I don't know if I've answered your question. It all depends on what it is you're wanting to do.
Mm.
It all depends on how much of a self-starter you are. So if, so the question is not cast in stone. And as I said in the beginning, that if you want to, you have a good idea, after a little bit of planning, jump into it. Because if you say that, okay, I'm going to wait for an MBA or whatever it might be, then ask yourself, are you really an entrepreneur? Okay, and I'm sorry, I might be going against the grain here as far as what they teach you, but entrepreneurs are by instinct. They know, they got to do it. Jeff Bezos quit a lucrative career on Wall Street and headed all the way west with a business plan. And of course, he had the funding lined up. He knew, okay? People like, I keep bringing up these people like Steve Jobs and company because those are well known, but there's several thousands who are not well known who just had that entrepreneurial bug in them, who were wanting to do something. They had an idea and wanted to get going. So, but now, sorry, it is turning out to be a long answer in my case, but this is something for you to take. Quiet, Remy. So, I'm sorry. I did not start out wanting to be an entrepreneur, just FYI. That's why I did my MBA. And as I started doing my IT stuff, and I was working at Compaq at the time, now it's Hewlett Packard, I started realizing when I was looking at these vendors, you know what, I could be doing this stuff better than what these people are doing. So I didn't get the entrepreneurial bug way until later. I didn't start out when I did my MBA that I'm going to be an entrepreneur. That wasn't the case. So take solace in the fact that, if it's not hit you as yet, it might hit you in the future. So I hope that answers your question.
One thing I would add to it is I think, and this goes back to a little bit what I was talking about earlier on, is one of the things that I always ask people to do is experiment in a field that you're interested in before you jump in. There are some people who are like Bezos and, like Jobs, maybe not Jobs, but they know what they want to do, or they know they're going to go out in this field somewhere, they're going to do something. But they're unique figures, okay? I'm sorry, but they're in a lot of cases, they're unique figures, okay? A lot of us, we have to experiment with what we want. We have to experiment with what's out there to see, if this is what we want, or if there's opportunities. Because we get in our mind, I've started 2 companies that I thought were absolutely genius, right? I got them in my mind, but after I got into the field and experimented for 2 years, I found they were worthless. And if I would have done it the opposite way, where if I would have went in and got a job and worked in those fields and had someone pay me to learn, then I'd be way ahead. Plus I'd have a lot more money in my pocket, right? But so that's what let's be frank, an MBA brings you the opportunity in a lot of cases, in a lot of fields, the connections and the position to kind of experiment these days. Because in some cases, and not in all cases, the undergraduate degree is not doing it anymore. The MBA is like the new undergraduate degree, just as a point of discussion. Okay, wrong or right, but it gets you that card in the game. Okay, and the last thing I would say is I lived in Asia, worked in Asia for 14 years. If you go in, even if you try to start a business in Asia, you don't have an MBA or a master's degree, especially as a foreigner, there's no way anyone's going to give you money. Zero chance. So domestically, you could do that. But if you go to Asia, you go to Japan, you go to Korea, and I built 4 businesses in China, and I'm asking for money from local government agencies, and they're like, you got an MBA? Yeah. Where is it from? They look at the name of the MBA school. It's like, I don't know that school. So they're even questioning that. So, but if you have a PhD or if you're from a good school and they respect that university and they see they see you have some knowledge in that field, and the way they can determine that is from that degree, then, you know, in those countries, in those areas, you can create opportunity, and that's where the MBA is valuable. So you have to understand that United States is kind of a unique system where we love that bootstrapping guy or woman who's never had a job and wants to do a startup. But there's a lot of countries in the world that if you don't have a master's degree or a PhD, you can't get funded. Or if you don't have someone on your team who doesn't have a PhD or MBA, you're not going to get funded. So I think a lot of it is just we're very lucky to be in the country that we are. So that's my 2 cents. So, we have one more. Valerie Martinez.
Hi, yeah. So from what I was observing, everything's kind of like answered my question, but I do have one that it's what is your knowledge on starting, well, not starting, but branching out your business online, like a website?
Branching out your business into a website?
Yeah,
Like
you know how
e-commerce?
people, like, you know how people they sell things online as well.
So e-commerce, yeah. Having an
Yeah,
online presence.
yeah.
Uh, okay, so are we talking about services, business, or product? Is it a product company you're referring to?
Yeah, it's a product company.
Okay. So, and the product is aimed towards consumers, not towards businesses. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, so if it's aimed towards consumers these days, it's absolutely a must to have an online presence. It is the most scalable technology out there, so it's good and bad, right? So good thing is that now everyone can be owning a business online, and the bad news is everybody can be owning a business. You got like millions of competitors. So the short answer is, yeah, you have to be online.
Yeah.
So,
And I
I mean,
think
I could go on and on, but I'll just leave it at that. It's there's no two ways about it.
And I think even a step further, you need to not just be online, but you have to learn how, and this is something that I'm learning. You were talking about lifelong learning. You know, I'm learning how to campaign because we're, launching the center. We're launching the center here, and I'm learning how to do online campaigning, for our center, right? And I think it's good to know there's a lot of people who know knowledge, who know how to use the online system. Maybe they know how to use Etsy or Shopify, but you need to know how to also campaign or market your business properly, right? And so, and I think we all know this, but I think that's one thing that you really need to kind of, commit to. And one of the tough things that I've even had to explain to people who work with me is, the marketing commitment is an ongoing, for lack of a better, ongoing battle for the shopper's eyes, for the people's, eyeballs. And you always have to be developing content. You always have to be out there generating position, because people are, like there, as you said earlier, there's, millions of competitors. And at the same time, people are constantly being bombarded. Right? So there's you know, you have to, it's really, you have to get really smart nowadays, and you have to always be out there. So it's being online is part of it, but the other half is really, and I think it even goes back to something else Nick said earlier, you have to be persistent. You know, if you're not persistently going out there and commit yourself to doing this every day, I think you're going to find your business is going to be very challenging. So, okay. Is there any follow-up questions? Okay. Well, Nick, I want to say thank you very much for hosting, making the time. It's really been an honor to get to know you, and really, you know, someone of your pedigree. I think everyone here is really in awe of all the things that you've done. And I think we're very lucky to have you here tonight. And thank you again for contributing your time. And also a big thank you for SCORE, for everything that SCORE does for not just for the small business, but for the community as well. Thank you very much, Nick.
Thank you, Patrick. It was fun. It's always great to talk to would-be entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs. So this is awesome. I'm happy to be here and sharing some thoughts. Good luck to you all.
And good luck from Dr. Woke from the McNair Center. Thank you very much for everyone for showing up. Absolutely a pleasure. Our first Q&A, it went over great, much better, you know, than, you know, I really, really appreciate and really loved the questions and the things that you did. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night, and be bold and be safe. Good night.
Thank you.